Excellent.
Dave Balter was the founder and CEO of BzzAgent. We like to tell others about a book we've just read, a new restaurant we've discovered, or our latest new gadget. And in BzzAgent, Dave found a way to harness and channel our enthusiasm. Consumers are given samples of new products and are asked to write honest reviews. Even a bad review is better than no review. So Dave, looking forward to talking to you, and welcome to my Isenberg School of Management class.
Hi everyone, welcome to you. Thanks for joining me.
Have you been out to UMass Amherst?
Years ago in college, I got lost once. I remember that. Yeah.
Okay. Did you get in any trouble? Was it
did.
ZooMass at the time?
It was ZooMass. I actually went to a ZooMass concert. Beastie Boys, Fishbone, and one other. It was that I got pretty lost at that concert.
Okay,
anyway,
more than one
there
way,
you
I
go.
suspect.
Yeah.
So before we talk about your strategy for raising capital, I'm curious about a point that's raised early in the Harvard Business School case study. I was surprised for a guy with your marketing pedigree that you made a point of announcing that there would be no media interviews for the first couple of years of BzzAgent. What in the world were you thinking about?
So at the time, in the sort of the space that we really got into, it was known at the time as stealth marketing or guerrilla marketing, and the whole framework of it was to try to sort of sneak up on unsuspecting consumers and share with them whatever it is you were trying to market without them knowing. It was almost like stunt marketing. So our approach was, let's get real people and have them talk about products honestly and authentically, but we wanted it to be not stunty, actually capture the power of real word of mouth, someone's real opinion. We felt that if it got out too early, if people knew we were doing this too early, the press would sort of have a field day associating us with this, what we sort of considered deceptive marketing. And so we put a page up on our site that said to the press, please don't write about this, call us before you do. And that sort of, of course, that got the press's attention. I don't know if it would work so well today. The press would say we don't really care about you, so it doesn't really matter. But at the time, it was true. Like in our heart of hearts, we were like, we really, really don't want to ruin this until we get enough scale and audience that we thought it could work.
And then that really changed big time. There was a story about BzzAgent on the front page of the New York Times Sunday magazine. Yeah. So how did that come about?
So this is actually a great lesson for us. We started by going out to try to find venture capital early in the business. We were turned down by 200 or so VCs and investors. It was a very tough time. So we decided to build the business authentically, like let's sell something at a price more than we made it for. So we started building a real company. We often talked a lot about a marketer by the name of Seth Godin as somebody that we really were, inspired by. He wrote Permission Marketing. Later, I'm sure people know Purple Cow and a couple of his other books. But we really, really believed in, the heart of what he was talking about. So one day we get an email. I'll never forget. There were 4 of us packed in this tiny room, and an email comes in from Seth Godin saying, I think it said like checking up, checking in. So we, turned to each other like, could that be Seth Godin? We end up talking to Seth. Seth says, I want you to help with something. We do some programs for him, and we do them at no charge to start. I think we eventually, he became a paying client, but we did it at no charge. The magic here is, at the time, it was more for doing the right thing and sort of taking care of Seth the way he took care of us. The magic is, at some point, a New York Times reporter called him and said, tell me what's the hottest thing in marketing. He said BzzAgent. That reporter called us. He came by, started interviewing us. I thought it was a tiny little article. We'd had a few press interviews, but nothing major. And then 2 days before it came out, he called me and said, oh, just by the way, it's an 8,000-word cover story article, which, I sort of fell off my chair. I did ask for my picture on the cover, To which they New York Times laughed at me and said that's safe for important people. So
and so did you get up at 1 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, run to the newsstand to buy the first one off the press to see if you had to buy the rest of them so nobody would read the story?
That's right. If we had to burn them all, we did. We did. Got up early. It was 2004, so the internet isn't quite what it was today. It took a while, I remember, for it to come out online, and so we went out and bought as many as we could and shared them with everybody. And I that you'd imagine, but truthfully, like the next day, the business changed. We had clients calling us, send me a contract, and we'd say, well, we should talk about what we do. No, just send me a contract, we'll sign it.
Well, I read the story in preparation for having this conversation, and it really is a great story, and it puts you in a great light. So that must have been a good moment in the company's history.
Very proud, yes.
So let's talk now about financing. Mm-hmm. And first, you had a pattern of calling your so-called seed round a Series A investment, and then what was really a Series A round a Series B. So maybe you could just explain to my students kind of what's a seed round and what's an A and B, and then why fussing with the nomenclature.
Okay, all right. So just to be clear, we did our financings in 03 and 04 for that company. Terms and times have changed. So that's one lesson always, is that what people call an A at some point, 10 years later, maybe a B or a seed. So at the time we'd raised our seed round, we were doing $3 million in revenue, so we called it an A. Like we built a real company, we were profitable, so it was an A round. And then we were scaling so fast that at the time, what you might call an A today, I think we were doing $10 million in revenue. We called a B. Okay. Today, I would look at it like a seed round is a company that probably doesn't understand exactly where it's even going to make money. Maybe it's making a tiny bit, but its product is not, fully baked. It's got a lot of work to do. You seed finance it. And A is really, okay, this company has traction. It's got a direction. Away we go. B to me is really about I know exactly how to run this business. All I need to do is pour gas on the fire, turn the dials. And so your B financing is just to figure out how to pump hard against what you already know.
And so was the strategy in your use of the terms, were you trying to convey the impression that you were perhaps a little further along than you really were? Was this
so I should acknowledge,
was there fake news involved?
No, there was definitely, there was shaping. There was shaping. I don't know if we go so far as fake news, but I should acknowledge our chairman at the time was a guy by the name of Shakar Ghosh, who's an amazing guy, and he really shaped this whole financing. I look back on it as I was really naive. I was sort of like, what are we doing? How's this working? And he really helped us do this. So the pricing was really, or the framing of Series B was absolutely to get a certain price for the business, to set a valuation at a certain level. And it did, it was hard to argue with. The company was growing at a certain rate. And this is really important, there was so much inbound demand from venture capitalists that, you got away with the fact we called it a B. It was on the line. All right, we called it a B. What type of valuation does that look like? That helped us set it.
But beyond that, in 2005, you were profitable, you were growing, yes. You had some you had some marquee customers. It looks, reading between the lines in the Harvard Business School case, you're feeling pretty good about yourself.
We were, yeah. Cocky is probably a nice word.
Brash is a word I think that I might have seen. Good. Yes. Yeah. So your then Chairman Kavanaugh suggested something rather unconventional, and dare we call it brash, approach to fundraising, and you meaning the company, were going to dictate the terms to the VC, as opposed to the VCs telling you what they were willing to pay and what the terms were. Yeah. So what was going on in your mind at that time?
Yeah, so again, I was very naive to financing like this. So it was sort of like, okay, I'm just kind of following what's going on around me. I remember one VC brought us in and sort of put me in a back room and handed me a term sheet, and it had all these, aggressive terms. And I remember walking out of the room, and all of the other venture capitalists were standing in their doorways clapping as I walked by. Like, oh, welcome aboard, clapping like this assumptive close. And I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. I'm sort of like, now, remember I was turned down by 200 VCs. Now they're standing in their offices
Who
clapping.
Who is this VC? You can.
Can I not say?
No, you can. This is you're among
All right, I'll
friends.
only say because I ended up taking capital from them, which is General Catalyst.
Okay.
And they were fantastic partners. Loved them. But when I went back and reflected on that and a couple other things, we said, you know what? Let's maybe try to change how we do this, and instead of waiting for them to give us their term sheet, let's write our own, and let's do something specific. Let's take the terms right out of the National Venture Capital Association standard template and say, look, we're doing this the right way. Like, this is the template. We haven't really changed anything. If you want to work with us, this is what we'll sign.
So my students are familiar with David Fialco
Yeah.
of General Catalyst.
Yeah.
Was he the partner that you were working
He
with?
wasn't. It was. I spent a lot of time with David. He's fantastic. John Simon was the partner at the time. He's now at Sigma, and so he was the one who was leading this with us.
Okay. So, and one of the issues with so what was the reaction to the VCs by the VCs when you were setting the terms?
Well, I'll tell you how this sort of happened.
And not only you were setting terms, but you gave them a week to decide.
We gave him a week. So we were aggressive about it. Now, there was one critical moment to this whole thing. So we set this term sheet, and I write this letter to the VCs that was very much to your brash statement. It was very much like, you are, I'm going to give you this thing, and you have a week. We'll decide if we're going to accept you. It was very, very aggressive. And I remember sending it to one of our board members, Jeff Glass, at the time, and it was like 11:30 on a Saturday night. And I remember him calling me and like, do not send this out. And I'm like, okay, why? He said, let me rewrite it. So he sends me this letter, and it opens. It's almost like, dear amazing venture capitalist. And the letter was like, we are so honored you'd even consider us to be part of this, part of your fund, and all these things, because we had to soften the blow, right? Like, we couldn't come off as like
brash,
yeah,
to use a word.
Brash. And I mean, I think Jeff saved the financing. We sent this out. 6 rejected it right away, and 6 signed it. And that was amazing. They signed it right away. Also, Shakar had said, I think we had a term in there nicely that said, like, if you change, we will not accept changes to the term sheet. You are welcome to, but know that the other venture capitalists are unlikely to make changes. You'll just be at a disadvantage. So 6 just signed it. And then it was up to us to decide who we wanted to work with. So
before we talk about your decision, are there lessons that we can draw from the idea of you setting the terms, or was that just simply a sign of the times, or a sign of a hot company? I mean, is this something that you would do with? Have you ever done it again? Would you do it today with your current company?
No, I think it was a sign of the times. It was a very early sort of, the venture capital community has changed greatly since then. But I think you could get away with it again if the company was so hot that there was, like, you just had demand coming out of your ears. Okay, well, maybe I can get away with this. There is a little more today alignment, I find, between entrepreneurs and VCs when they get to term sheet setting. Yes, the VC tends to send the term sheet, but I've been in many situations where they're like, go ahead, you write it up, and I'm happy to take some edits at it. It's a little more conversational. I think there used to be a veil between what's a VC term sheet look like and what do I accept. It's now like everybody knows what term sheets look like.
And they post them on the internet.
Yeah, they're everywhere. So it's no longer a mystery, right?
And how? So you just mentioned that you think the VC industry is quite different today than it was 10 years ago. How so?
Yeah. I do think the relationship and the crossover between VC and entrepreneur has become both more congenial and more aligned. Many entrepreneurs are VCs, and I'm part of a fund called Boston Seed and an entrepreneur. one of many who do that in this town. Not to mention it used to be like, oh, look at it was like zoo animals. We'd go out and be like, VCs, look over there, they're hanging out together. It's now very much like you go to parties with VCs all the time. They hang out with entrepreneurs. As a matter of fact, their job is to go hang out with entrepreneurs, and our jobs are to mingle with them. And
you're even married to one.
I am married to one. That is right. I am now married to one. Yes.
So there you go.
Yeah. Lord help me. Yeah.
All right. So in going back to 2005, you decided to set certain criteria as being important to you. And I recall that they were effort and chemistry and domain expertise and value added and then cachet.
Yeah.
So today, or in retrospect, do all of those criteria merit equal weight in your view?
The only one that's hard that I find depends on the time. All the other things like effort level. I mean, we had VCs say, like one of them that signed, a very big West Coast firm, said, we want to fund you and know that we will never bother you ever, and we will only show up for board meetings, and even then we won't bother you at all.
And so by effort you mean
I wanted them to put an effort at the time. I still want, like, you're my venture capital partner, like, get involved, right? Like, so that one was off the list, and they were very upset when we told them why. They're like, what, you're an idiot. Like, you don't want us in your shorts. But cachet is a tough one. Like, we're still in this game. Some VCs still have lemming behavior. Who else is in, right? Oh, they're in. I want to be in. And that's a dangerous thing. The problem is truly for entrepreneurs that it's a fact. Like, if you get a tier 1 VC, you're going to attract other venture capitalists at a much greater rate than if you find a family office that no one knows to lead around. And so cachet matters. I think if you have a chance to not let cachet influence what your decision is, I would focus entirely on chemistry and expertise, because those are the things that in the end will determine whether or not your business is going to continue to grow with that partner.
So one of the companies, so the case study describes company or venture firm A, venture firm B, and venture firm C. So venture firm A, and I trust you'll tell us who these firms really are.
Yeah.
Venture firm A is from Boston. Seed early stage. There's a connection with Kavanaugh. They're experts in consumer tech. But the one thing that struck me in the description is that you characterize them as being kind, honest, direct, and respectful. And that struck me, just again reading between the lines, as something that seemed pretty important to you. Do I read that right?
It did. Remember that I came from being turned down really in dramatic fashion by a lot of venture capitalists in the early part of the business. And I probably had a pretty negative feeling about how venture capitalists worked. And so at that time, I'm like, I need a partner who's a partner, like, and I feel like I can, that I trust. And so that was super important. I would still say to this day, those are really good things to have in your venture capitalist. I do find, though, that sometimes those that are hard driving and peculiar and, just a little bit like they got a strong opinion. That's pretty good too. You want people who are gonna sort of do something dramatic to help your business succeed.
And so that firm is, what's the name of that?
That was Flybridge Capital. Yeah.
And
it was IDG at the time, switching to Flybridge. But
and you actually they're the ones that you actually took the capital from.
Jeff Busgang.
Okay. So, and then company B, firm B, a West Coast firm, real strong pedigree.
Yeah.
They were well known, recognized. Didn't appear to know much about consumer tech, and they're the ones who said there's no significant involvement other than maybe occasionally going.
Yeah.
So which firm was
that? So
that?
the irony there is that was Excel, who had recently invested in Facebook, and said we can. And they brought him. That was like right at the beginning, and they brought him out to the West Coast. So for me to say they had no consumer tech is pretty funny.
And in retrospect, that might not have been bad money to take.
It probably would have been good money to take. And I actually, the companies I'm in now, that I'm leading now, I often look to take some West Coast, some East Coast. There's a lot of value in having both coasts involved.
Okay. And then the last one, Company C, they had an office in Boston and Silicon Valley, well established. They were responsive. They actually made a bunch of intros to you during this 1 week that you gave them to.
Yes.
And which firm was that?
I believe that was General Catalyst.
Okay, so you ultimately did take some money from them.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so did Flybridge and General Catalyst come in at the same time?
Yep. The only two. Yeah.
All right. So you took money from both.
Yep.
All right. So then one of the things that I noticed in your term sheet that you offered is that you offered redemption to these firms in tranches in years 5, 6, and 7. And it surprised.
What was I doing?
It surprised. What were you doing? What were you thinking about?
I actually don't know because I didn't know.
Is that your lawyer's fault?
I think it was their. I'm trying to. This was 10 plus years ago. I do believe that when we got down to the final terms, things evolved a little bit. Right. Once we picked the partners, like anything, you move, you get trade stuff. I think if I remember correctly, we were growing so fast they were afraid that we were going to sort of never use their money and eventually just let the company sort of exist as a profitable business. Because at the time we were very profitable, running it like your family business that's profiting. And I think at the time it was protection against that. Hey, if in year 5 you're not spending money, you're just doing your thing, give us our money back.
No,
right?
and I totally understand that that's a term that the VCs would want.
Yeah.
What surprised me is that you offered it up. But I guess what I'm hearing is that maybe that's something that they might have asked for.
I don't
anyway,
remember, yeah.
Okay, so then you took this money, and then ultimately, and the valuation, I guess the post-money valuation was about $50 million. So your pre-money valuation
54.
was 40.
Pre-40,
they put in 10.
13.7.
Okay, so 54.
Yeah.
And then 6 years later, BzzAgent was sold for what was reported to be $60 million to dunnhumby.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't look like the investors got much more than their money back.
So here's where it gets complex.
What's the math look like?
Yeah, the math, the VCs, so the math is the people who did the best were the angels and the employees. Yeah. And then the VCs got their money back. Now the VCs had a chance to share in the potential earnout for common, so they could have dropped down to common like us, or they could have gotten their money back, made no money. Okay. At the time, it didn't make sense to me. I'm like, you guys should stick around. Like, I'm going to go work at this company, and we're going to make it worth something. And they probably should have. They would have made more than their money back. I didn't really understand at the time IRR and how long it would take and why it mattered to them. Probably easier to just get their money back, which they did. So they took their money back. We all not only did well on the upfront, but the company did well. I ended up renegotiating the acquisition terms about a year and a half into the new company, and I wish the VCs had stayed in. I would have liked to have made them a little bit of money.
Yeah. So what are you up to now, Dave?
So now I run a company called Milestone. We have technology and a system that translates people's photographs into stories. So if you're looking to tell the story of an aging parent or of a friend or you, all you have to do is give us your photo library, and we've got some interesting magic that begins to tell you a story. So we're working on that. We've been doing that about 18 months. I'm a venture partner at Boston Seed Capital, so I still do some investing. I'm about to roll out a cryptocurrency business, which I can't quite talk about yet, but that's coming. And I do some other stuff, but those are my day jobs.
So any final words of advice to the would-be entrepreneurs sitting in my classroom?
I would say, the journey is a great one. Be prepared. Everyone tells you it can be difficult, and you can be, sleepless nights and scary times and all the rest. You do have to be wound a certain way to want to do this. Be prepared for those things. Be prepared for some amazing fun times too. But I suppose actually the number one thing I tell you is go get a real job first. figure out how other managers lead, what companies you like, et cetera, get some skills, and then come join a startup or lead a startup. You'll know a lot more if you try some other things first.
Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate your thoughts.
See ya.